Hey guys, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And I hope you enjoyed this interview. All right, welcome back. Johnson Chuku, the Group Managing Director at Carry Asset Management Limited, joins me right now. Chief Chuku, good to see you. Good morning, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Chief Nancy, and thank you for having me.
Now, let's get started. I don't know if you saw that Vox Pop which we took, Nigerian Speak, and I want us to take it from there. That was why I said it should be replayed. The man that we saw on the street was lamenting the condition, the terrible condition he's living with right now. No light for 2 weeks where he is, a mudu of Gary. Gary that used to be the common man's food now is no more the common man's food. He actually had to sing for us. Are we serious? Are we moving back or are we moving backwards or forward? How distressed is the Nigerian economy really? And what do you really have to say about perhaps your reaction to what we got from the streets?
Well, Nancy, the street is quite tough for people, for Nigerians. Most Nigerians are going through some level of difficulties in meeting their basic needs. Just like the man that you just projected said, virtually everything has increased. The basic necessities of life have increased. The cost of the basic necessities of life have increased. Today, we are talking about food inflation about 40.53%. That is massive. That means in a single 1 year period, people's income, what they consume, because food accounts for more than 50% of Nigeria's household consumption basket. And it simply means that an average household has lost about 40% of their purchasing power in terms of food. And that is very huge. Because if a family that lives on, spends 80% of their household income on food, and today that value has been eroded by 40%, it simply means they can no longer afford to eat as they were eating at the same volume or quantity of food they ate last year. So it's quite, it's not, the street is not pleasant to most Nigerians. And then you talk of other areas you expect the government to weigh in, power supply, apart from those in band A, because I think there's been some improvement in band A customers supply level. But apart from those in band A, the people outside band A are still going through darkness in place of light. And many of the people in band C may not even have the money to buy a standby generator, alternative energy supply. So they rely on public supply. And they are not getting enough of that. So what are those things you expect from government? Everything has increased, school fees have increased. So if your child is not in public school, even if your child is in public school, most public schools do not have public transport vehicle that will convey your children to school. Even commuting and taking your child from home or your house to school is enough to erode your household income. Remember the minimum wage bill still remains, or minimum salary still remains 30,000 naira. And there are people who are earning about that on a monthly basis.
Mm. It's interesting that you brought up the issue of power, like that man on the street actually mentioned that where he is now, 2 weeks, no light. Um, what do you have to say about the discrimination in this band A to E, as it were? I also heard Senator Aline Dume speaking on that discrimination, and I know that court had asked NEC and AEDC from implementing band A to E electricity classification. What do you have to say about that, since even those in band A don't get, up to them, band D is even worse off?
Nancy, the discrimination is too wide. I'll give you an instance. My village, where I come from, my village in Ugwe, Canada State, they've not had light. And on Sunday, light only flickered twice in January this year. So the entire village and neighboring villages in nearly every locality in Abia North have not had light since the beginning of this year. So, and it's like EEDC doesn't even bother about that again. They no longer consider them as people who are entitled to get light because these are lower band categories. So the concept of even distribution, that you need to ensure that while those who can afford some basic necessities are made to pay, those who cannot afford also get some level of service is no longer there. Because what has happened is that most of the distribution companies have pivoted their service away from because they don't even have enough supply in the first place. So what are they doing? They are trying to optimize or maximize return. So they are selling power to those locations that are paying higher tariff. I think 206 naira per kilowatt hour. These lower bands, where you have the rural dwellers, they are just refusing to give them light. We've done everything. I've done everything personally to make sure my community gets light. It's just not happening. Get the transformer fixed, paid for it. Whenever they have a failure across that, we personally pay for it. But then to feed the network, it's impossible. We're not getting that. And like I said, it's gotten across almost all the communities around my village. But that's just where you can say, okay, those are rural areas. What are the urban areas? Those that live in Ajegule, those that live in Karo, in Abuja, those that live in areas that do not have so much processing power, they're not categorized as band A or band B. They get minimal power supply. And if you look at in the past, we had a rural electrification scheme that was supposed to ensure that even those in rural areas, those who cannot afford to pay so much, still get some level of power supply. Unfortunately, we are not. I don't think those people in such areas are getting anything close to what it used to be in the past.
Over this weekend, when I tried to, buy electricity tariffs, I also realized that the tariffs that I bought were reduced, unlike the tariff that I bought like 10 days ago. And I said to myself, I said, it be like say, uh, Mago don't do this thing, and let me explain. You remember that they increased the tariff to 226, I think, per kilowatt hour. Then they brought it down to
Yes.
206, citing foreign exchange that it has appreciated when it was about 1,000, 1,001. Then it came to 1,400 now. The last one was more than the one that I put in over this weekend. So while I was analyzing myself, I said, okay, be like say NEC or AEDC, they don't already introduce this thing, through the back door without knowing. But someone like me, we know. They didn't go to say now that it has increased though, tariffs has increased though, because foreign exchange has gone up. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So assuming
Absolutely.
I used to buy like, let me say 200 units for a certain amount. Let's say 50K, for example. That 50K now could give me only 100 units. What is the explanation for that? That is just the only explanation I could get over the weekend. So what do you have to say about that? You understand what I mean? And I know they are listening
Yes,
now, so you people should better take notes.
absolutely, Nancy. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't rule out that possibility. I don't know whether any Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission has empowered the distribution companies to adjust the meters, adjust the tariff for those in band A, knowing, believing that since they have the capacity to pay, that they will always pay, and that they may not bother to compute whether they are getting the same units
Exactly.
of power of credit that they pay for that they got when they paid for the same amount the previous payments. So it's not impossible that they have authorized
Increased
or
it.
given latitude to the electricity distribution companies to adjust their tariff based on movement to some of the variables that were supposed to form tariff adjustment. I don't rule out that. I don't have that proof, but from what you are saying, there is clearly an empirical proof of that.
Yes. And just like we said at that time that fuel subsidy day, I know I said it on this show. In fact, that day that jury announced the thing, I said fuel subsidy don't dey o. They were denying it. Now see where we are, they're still denying it. So my own postulation, except they convince me otherwise. But let's move ahead. In the midst of all of this, a potpourri of so many economic issues, like I mentioned, from the day this president came into office, May 29th, he's giving me a run for my money, because I don't sleep with my two eyes closed again, as it were, because one day one story. During Buhari, like one day one story or 1 week, you just be pursuing. But for Tinubu now, one day 10 stories. So you are like struggling, which one do you keep up with? Now, why I'm saying this is that what is the most pertinent issue that is threatening the Nigerian economy right now? Amidst all of the things that are just there, then we can take them one by one.
Okay, let's start from the issue of minimum wage. Of course, the government and Labour agreed for 5 days admittance to agree on the new minimum wage. I believe we are running out of the five days. I think they called off the strike on Tuesday. Today is Monday. So if you're using 5 working days, so that five timeline will expire by tomorrow. So there is a possibility that Labour will call another national strike. And remember the last one they did, they shut down the national grid, which affected everybody and would have ultimately had some impact on our GDP in the second quarter of this year. Because when you shut down power supply, you increase the cost of production across all facets of economic activities. If you shut down people, prevent people from going to work, you keep productivity for those number of days. So there's a possibility that we could witness another shutdown in economic activities. The second aspect is a drastic slowdown, possibly a drastic slowdown in productive activity as a result of the level of liquidity squeeze that the economy is witnessing today. Banks have actually moved up their lending rate to the region of close to 40%. And like I tell people, it's nearly impossible for any business person to borrow at 35, 40% and make returns or even be in a position to pay back those loans, unless it's doing something like unethical. But if you're doing a genuine business, that means your gross margin is almost in the region of 100% because you have to have your operating costs, which you have to deduct before arriving at your net earnings before interest and taxes, from which you now pay interest. So we have to deal with that. Today, the federal government and the central bank have withdrawn about 14.45, almost 14.5 trillion naira from the economy by ways of sale of OMO, sale of treasury bills, and federal government bonds. So, and remember that the liquidity that it tended to withdraw is a maximum of 30 trillion, 22.7 trillion that was injected under the Buhari government by ways and means, and about 7.3 trillion that was injected under the Tinubu's government by ways and means last year. So if you add up the two, you have about 30 trillion. If the government had withdrawn 17.5 trillion in 5 months, call it 6 months, because this is, well, yeah, 5 months, because we are still less than the middle of June, then remember they took 9 years to inject 30 trillion into the economy. And it's not as if that 30 trillion is hanging in the vaults of bank. They are permitted into the several segments of the economy. So if you pull out 17.5 trillion in a short period of 5 months, the impact they are going to shut down the economy. And the impact of that will begin to manifest by the time we enter the third quarter of this year, when productivity is going to slow down drastically, unemployment will skyrocket, and the GDP growth rate will slow to a halt. So those are the factors that I think are threatening the economy, which the government doesn't seem to be in a hurry to recognize or take immediate action.
How do you expect us to handle this minimum wage conversation? The government is saying, okay, just take urgent 2K, like they say, send me urgent 2K. The government has added urgent 2K to the 60 to the 60K. The people in the studio are actually laughing, but it's not a laughing matter. To send the urgent 2K, so government don't just put small alert of urgent 2K for the 60K with organized private sector. And Labour is saying we are going for 250,000 naira. States on one hand are saying we cannot pay 60K. Even for, as currently where it is as 30,000, some states are not even paying 30,000. In the midst of all of this, some states have also gone ahead to increase minimum wage. Edo State, for instance, Cross River State, I think 40,000. Lagos State is also moving. I don't know if Lagos State has really agreed now on the minimum wage to pay more than 30,000 naira. So how should we now handle this minimum wage conversation? Bearing in mind that, of course, it should be law. The last one has expired, as it were.
Well, Nancy, the first thing I would say that the government needs to be more serious with the issue of minimum wage. The government is being comical. And I'd say without seriousness, the government is being comical. You can't tell them, okay, we are willing to pay more than 60,000, and what you want to do is to increase by 2,000. But again, another thing that makes me feel that government is not being serious with the issue of negotiation with the labor is that it was after the national strike that the president ordered the minister of finance compensation. So what were they negotiating with? So on what basis were they negotiating? Are they saying that they were just throwing banding figures around? If they had not done their homework,
exactly, I thought so too.
And then you come to negotiation table as
just
government.
yeah.
It was only after the breakdown of negotiation. When you already offer 6,000, you now need to dimension the cost of the increase. Ideally, if the government was serious, they would have said, if we increase to this amount, this is going to be the cost implication on us. This is going to be weight on government expenditure.
Scenario planning. I mentioned it I mentioned it last week here when I saw that the president ordered the finance minister, and I was like, guys, what have you been doing since? So is it just you are just going to the table and just talk for talking's sake? You know, for me, I asked my guests, so I was like, make it not be like say they do too much or they ask, but this is what it's supposed to be, because there should be scenario planning. I agreed that Labour was just asking for outrageous 615,000 or even 494,000, which I also think is very outrageous. Labour is also being comical there. But as government, you should be serious and say, okay, this is 100,000, we cannot pay it. This is why we can't pay it. This is how much. Let's bandy numbers on the table. And it took the president to tell Wale Edu. I was like, no, this is not good optics.
Yeah, so that's why I said, one, the government has to be serious, because the government has an overriding duty to make sure that the economy is well run. Labor is one of the interest groups the government has to manage. Then the government, on the labor side, like rightly pointed out, labor is also being comical. You can't start with 494,000 naira. You know it's not feasible. But what I expect the government to do is that if they had done their analysis and they said that we sit down with labor, I believe the labor people are also rational and human beings. I'm still, this is where we are in terms of government revenue. This is the number of staff we have. This is the cost implication of increasing from 10,000 to 60,000. If we have to go to 70,000, that's what it will cost us. And this is the implication. And then at that point, it would not be a trade-off. Okay, you know what? If we have to pay a 90,000, we need to right size by 40%. Because the government, if not that we're talking of, we don't want to increase unemployment. The government can actually right size the public service by 40% and still achieve the same level of productivity, because you have a lot of excess capacity in many of the public sector institutions. But I'm sure Labour wouldn't want to do that. So in that case, it will not be a trade-off. Okay, you know what? Let's move to 70,000 or 80,000 and we will not right size. But if you want to force us to this, we will, because we can't afford a wage bill above this. We need to bring down the workforce by this percentage. And then that, if they had done that, I'm sure by now we would have reached some level of agreement. On the part of Labour, I still believe Labour, it has to come down to the earth.
So what is come down to earth for you, for Labour? Chief Chukwu, are you still there? Or the network is giving us shege promise? Don't give us shege promise this morning. Okay, I guess we'll take a break. Let's see if we can reconnect with Mr. Johnson Chukwu again. We're looking at burning economic matters. We'll be right back. This is Moneyline with Nancy. I am Nancy Naji. Does that mean that when there's a new government, the people managing perhaps the economy or any sector should now be agitated that there's a new sheriff in town and all of us will be asked to go?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. And great question, by the way.
It's a great question, Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nancy. It's a good question.
The school does not teach us about money, and this is money line. So we are the one that teaches people what financial education really is.
A lot of things that we need to address in this country, and one of those things definitely is corruption.
Let me start by commending you for what you've been doing for years. As I said, I've been following your show for almost 10 years now.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to help me to come to this great program.
Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. All right, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, Group Managing Director at Akari Asset Management, is still with me now. Welcome back, Mr. Chukwu. The network is, not a bit friendly this morning. Mr. Chukwu, are you there? When you said earlier that labor should come back to earth, what did you mean? How much figure are you proposing? Mr. Chukwu, can you hear me? How much figure are you proposing? Yes, when you said labor should come back to earth, how much figure are you proposing?
Okay, Nancy, I think difficult for both of them. One is you also expect the private sector operator to pay the minimum wage. So
the network is still breaking, Mr. Chukwu. If you can hear me, can you hear me? The network from your end is still breaking. Can you hear me? Okay. It seems we've lost the connection. Let's quickly take another break to reconnect.
We can do it. We can build our country for the sake of the millions of the people. Delivery, yes, we must achieve it.
It could seem impossible because you don't dream big. When you have this mentality of an achiever, nothing is impossible.
So don't take on too much commercial or private debt so you can service. Any country, if you can service, if you're generating enough revenue from investing that money, fine. But if you're not, you have to be extremely careful because debt relief is not easy.
Hard decisions have been taken and they are required to help us because the central bank can't do it on its own. It has to work very closely with the fiscal side. One without the other is like, that famous adage of clapping with one hand. It won't go anywhere.
The last thing central banks want is the financial system, the tail of the dog, to start wagging the body of the dog, which is the economy itself. They don't want a feedback loop from bad finance to bad economics.
This is Moneyline with Nancy, and I am Nancy Naji, where I consistently give you a dose of finance, economy, markets, as well as investment information. All right, this is Nigeria, so let's continue. Nigeria, we hailed you. Mr. Chukwu, welcome back. Let's see. Okay, just go ahead. Did you hear my last question? How much is is the figure you're proposing?
Okay, what I said is any amount above 100,000 would be tough for the private sector operators to sustain. That the labor unions must also recognize that they are negotiating with not just the public, but also the private sector operators are also required to pay the minimum wage at the level the private sector will be compelled to license immediately if they have to pay that minimum wage.
Mr. Chukwu, can you hear me? I don't know if I got an exact figure from you. How much are you proposing? I had guests last week. The two guests, one told me 65 to 75, another told me 84,000. How much are you proposing?
I think the government should look at between 90 and 100,000. Okay,
90 and 100K. All right, let's move over to another issue. I don't know if I've spoken to you. I haven't spoken to you in a while since President Tinubu's 1-year anniversary. Has President Tinubu been pro-business? Has he been pro-business? And I'm intentional with that question because this administration will say, oh, they are pro-business, president goes up and down, try to bring in foreign investment. Yet we see a lot of companies that are exiting or downsizing their operations in Nigeria. Reform, so we are removing petrol subsidy to be pro-business, devaluing the Naira and all of that. But would you say in all sincerity that this administration is pro-business?
I think policies are largely private focused. Whether they've achieved the intended goal is a different thing. But in terms of policy pronouncements, one would say that all the policy pronouncements are around what we expect in a package economic environment. Some of them have had unintended negative consequences, but the core of the policies are free market, pro-business policies.
Okay.
There could be the other factor that may be impeding the expected results of those policies. But you can't say, unlike the immediate past government in the first few years of its life, was more of focus on, it was caught between a communist or socialist policy and a market-oriented policy.
Okay, let's move to another issue, and the issue is that of Heritage Bank. And I know why I'm bringing this question. You were a former bank MD, and of course, 2005 until we saw consolidation under the former central bank governor, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, who is now the governor of Anambra State. How big is too big? Because for me now, I don't know the area where we are. There was a time, of course, during, is it Sanusi and Emefiele, that we had the syndrome of too big to fail. Now, how big is too big? Putting into cognizance the recapitalization process that is ongoing. That is one. The second part of my question is, Bill Gates in 1994 said that banking is necessary, but not banks. He said that in 1994, yet we are beginning to see that becoming true. How do you juxtapose my second question with the first.
Okay, let's start with the first question. How big is big fair? The central bank has actually identified and classified some banks as systemically important banks. Those banks are the banks that their failure will have a domino effect on the entire financial system. A few of those banks have been classified. Heritage was never part of that systemically important banks. So, and what the central bank does, the level of supervision, the level of capital requirement, the level of what do you call it, car reserve of this systemically important bank are monitored almost on a daily basis. And the central bank makes sure that they don't take the level of risk that will jeopardize their solvency and affect the entire banking system. So that's what I would say on that. In terms of what Bill Gates said, that banking is necessary, but banks are not necessary. The evolution of banking has gone through multiple stages. Well, of course, they tell you the evolution of money and the evolution of banking came about at the same time. The evolution of banking was basically a goldsmith that I'm sure we are familiar with this story, that people will bring their gold for safety, and you give them a receipt, and the receipt becomes what, instead of coming to redeem their gold all the time, they can as well transfer that receipt, and the receipt, when you for value.
Mr. Chukwud, your connection is actually breaking. I hope you can hear me. Let's
Yeah.
Okay. Now it's a bit better. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so that's the origin of banking. So banking has gone through several levels of transformation. We're going through another uncharted level of transformation where digital technology is disrupting the brick and mortar banking platforms. And that's going to now. I think people now see that the kind of technological transformation that happened in my lifetime did not happen for several generations preceding our time. We were born when there was no GSM. We were born when there was no internet. I have shared these stories with people when my son, when he was age of 10, asked me to buy him a mobile phone. That you are not old enough to play. Asked me about it. I said there was no mobile phone then when I was 10. He said, so what were you using to solve the internet? And I told him there was no internet then. He said, what was life like? That it was very boring. But just to tell you the depth of technological advancement we witnessed, the formal ways we do things. Banking, not just an exception. So it is disrupting services, it's disrupting banking services, banking service platforms, and providing us new tools to provide the same banking services. So I think we're going to get the point where we don't need to all aggregate in one office and say, I want to make a withdrawal or deposit.
Okay, 3 questions for you, and we have about 3 minutes to go. From a former bank MD, of course, you're a former bank MD. Your bank did not survive consolidation then, isn't it? Is it not Guardian Trust Bank? But what advice will you have to, what advice will you give to these categories of bank MDs now? Of course, you've made the point that banking those days is different from now. What advice will you give to bank MDs now? And number 2 is also, what advice will you give to bank depositors? Then the second question is around the ASAP document. I need to bring it in. Last week we saw excerpts of it. Government said, no, it's not official and all of that. But whether they will still come back to that in the next few days or weeks, we'll know. What do you think about that? Then finally, the final question is one word. If you want to use one word to describe where we are right now economically, what will that be? I hope the connection allows us to end this.
Yeah, let me make a little correction. I wasn't the MD of Guardian Express Bank. It was Mike Chukwu that was the MD of Guardian Express Bank.
Oh, okay. But you were,
okay,
but you were MD of a bank, isn't it?
Yes.
So Okay, go ahead, Mr. Chuku, go ahead.
So in terms of consolidation, Ghana State Bank survived consolidation and consolidated the Spring Bank. But Spring Bank did not survive the interest of board politics. And it was acquired by then Heritage Bank. And now this is the direction it has gone. But in terms of what I would describe, what do I think about the banking consolidation? I think a number of banks are focused on going it alone. You can see almost all the banks are doing right issue. They also don't want dilution in their ownership. Then finally, how will I describe the economic space? I think for the private sector, it's very challenging. Demand has collapsed. Costs are increasing, including interest costs. When you don't have strong demand, you have increased interest costs. Unfortunately, even the exchange rate that had strengthened in the past has also weakened back around 1,500 naira. So we're dealing with multiple challenges for private sector operators. The government may only be the only sector that is smiling because we've seen an increase in federal allocation to the federal government by more than 50% in the first 4 months of this year. So liquidity is actually coming solely from the public sector.
I asked about the Accelerated Stabilization and Advancement Plan document, which the government has said is not official yet. What do you think? I don't know if you saw excerpts from that. Of course, excerpts from that indicated that they're still paying subsidy, there's still more room to borrow, there are borrowing plans and all of that. What do you say?
No, that's it. You know what? When I saw that, I read through it and I thought it's something that could be a discussion point thereafter. But when the government came and denied the major component of that report and said, look, there is no time when they said they are paying subsidy. Subsidy in that report said about 5.4 trillion naira, which we all know. I'm not certain of the exact figure, but it's clear that we are paying subsidy. And the government has denied that and denied everything about. So for me, everything about that accelerated economic development plan have to be put in abeyance.
Okay. You know, we have a history of this somehow. Let's not see, Mr. Chukwu is still there. Let's not hope that this will still come back to, discussion, into the discussion space, or they will target another name. But whatever it is, there is a plan that is expected from the coordinator of the economy, who also doubles as the Minister of Finance. Chief Chukwu, are you still there? Can you hear me? Thank you very much.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much for coming on today's edition of the program. I don't know why network is a bit finicky this morning, which is unlike your network, and who is paying for this actually? There's a cost to all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting because I've tried to change to 3 networks within that time. All of them are fluffy.
Exactly,
So
and we are bearing the cost. All right, thank you very much for your insights this morning. I hope to see you soon and have a great day.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Thank you all for your company. Like I always said, be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. And of course, I think I'll also direct my quotes to the public officials, Senate and co, all of them, as we are negotiating for a minimum wage. Change should begin with them. They should be the best they want to be, and we'll see a better Nigeria. I am Nancy Naji. I'll see you all again next time. Bye now. Thank you for watching. In case this is your first time watching us, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, drop your comments as well as like, and most of all, share our content.